Good afternoon, everyone. I am Chris, and I'm back with another movie review. This time for Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, which is the seventh, I think, seventh installment in the Transformers live-action franchise at this point. This one's directed by Stephen Caple Jr., and I'll go into the plot in a minute. It's another Transformers movie, just what everyone wanted, apparently. I'm pretty much fresh out the cinema from this one. I got back maybe about like 40 minutes ago or something like that. But I wanted to come on and sort of get my fresh opinions on this. I don't think it's going to be a very long review. Earlier today, I actually did a test audio video, really, really quick live stream just to check because it seems like I'm watching a couple of my old videos back. I've been having some problems with the final video. It looks like it's been kind of skipping out sections, skipping every few seconds, which basically makes an unwatchable video, which is really, really frustrating. So I checked it both with Ethernet and with Wi-Fi, and both have been absolutely fine. So fingers crossed for this one, because if it still isn't, then I literally don't know what the issue is. And I'll hopefully have to try and get it fixed some other way. But yeah, here we are. Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. This is a kind of sequel to Bumblebee, but not really. And I'll go into my reasons why it doesn't really feel like a sequel to Bumblebee. And they're still touting it as a prequel to the 2007 Transformers movie, the original Michael Bay one. But this is very much just a soft reboot, which was pretty much started from Bumblebee. There's this can't exist in the same universe as the Michael Bay Transformers films, even though it feels like they're still trying to crowbar it into those films. Certainly visually and also from the soundtrack choices as well. There's although Steve Jablonsky didn't do the music for this film, the music for this one was done by Yongnik Batemps. I've absolutely butchered that pronunciation, but he does use a lot of Steve Jablonsky's themes, like Arrival to Earth, and is it called One Shall Stand, One Shall Fall? I can't remember what it's called. It always plays in like the closing 5 minutes of every Transformers movie. So they're still trying to keep it in that Michael Bay verse, but it literally can't happen. When Optimus Prime lands in the original Transformers film, the Arrival to Earth sequence where they all come down in meteors, Optimus, it gives the impression that they've never been on Earth before. They're all kind of in proto form, and they then have to copy the nearby vehicle that they see so that they can hide in plain sight. It feels like none have been to Earth before, and they don't know how things work or what things are or any kind of spatial awareness. Optimus even says when Sam Witwicky asks him how they speak English, Optimus says, "We learned Earth's languages through the World Wide Web." Well, apparently in Bumblebee, they were around in the 80s, and Optimus Prime was already on Earth, and he was already a truck, and he could speak English just fine. But yet there's little bits in Bumblebee where Bumblebee can't speak, and you see how he gets his vocal cords damaged, like it is a prequel to the Michael Bay. So it's this weird in-between. I'm going to say that Bumblebee was a soft reboot, which I think is safe to say exactly what it was. Sort of just going into my history of the Transformers franchise and just like the cartoons as well. I grew up with the cartoons. I watched the original Transformers movie growing up. I had some of the toys as well. But my main Transformers series that I watched, although Generation 1 was my favorite, the one that I grew up with very much was the one that this film is very, very loosely based on. And that's Beast Wars, which was at the time, it was a groundbreaking show, really, in terms of the computer animation. But it was that early, what is it, mid-90s, I think? I think it was 96 to like 99, I think it was. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it was like mid to late 90s. And I think the animation won an Emmy or something like that. I think it won an award at the time because there wasn't really any other animated show out there like that at the time. But now you look at it and it's terrible. It's really, really bad. But I from my memory, that the characterization and the storylines were pretty good. It's a show that I do want to go back to at some point. I've got all the Generation 1 cartoons, but I would like to do some kind of marathon at some point and then lead back onto Beast Wars. when they announced that this was going to be called Rise of the Beasts and it was going to be bringing in the Maximals and the Terracons and the Predacons and things like that, I didn't know how to feel about it because I thought it was going to be touted as a sequel to Bumblebee. And from how Bumblebee ended, there was the whole thing of Optimus Prime on Earth. I thought it'd be following more in the vein of that. And Bumblebee's a crowd favorite, so I thought they'd stick with that. Maybe bring in some of the other Autobots as well. Maybe even see Megatron again, which again I know wouldn't fit in with the Michael Bay films because Megatron should be in ice at this point, searching for the Allspark. But continuity be damned at this point anyway. But then they mentioned that it was also going to be a Beast Wars film, and it was going to kind of serve as this in between. And I thought, okay, like I'll check it out. It could be cool. Because I felt like Travis Knight. Well, I didn't love Bumblebee. I didn't think Bumblebee was fantastic, and it still had a lot of the problems that I've had with the Michael Bay films. Is that it's way too much human screen time and not enough Transformers time. But Bumblebee did give us the single greatest live action Transformers scene at the very, very beginning of that film, where you have all of the Autobots fighting the Decepticons, all in Generation 1 style. The CGI reimaginings of those characters looks flawless. I knew which characters they were. It didn't look like a mishmash of mechanical moving parts and gears and wheels and things like that, and they didn't look ugly. They looked very blocky, and they followed the art style pretty much of their designs from the Generation 1 cartoons, which I absolutely loved. And it's like a 3-minute scene, but that's what I want from a Transformers movie. I know, shockingly enough, all I want from a Transformers film is to see the Transformers. That's all I want. That's all I've ever wanted. But for some reason, Paramount and Hasbro, or whoever's to blame for this shit, just can't seem to get that into their tiny little minds that that's all we want. So, of course, we get human leads in this again. Bumblebee wasn't great, but Bumblebee had a lot of heart to it. Oh God, I've actually forgotten her name now. Let me bring it up. Haley Steinfeld. I thought she was really good in it. I thought she was really, really good as the female lead in Bumblebee. Then we get to this one, and we get the two leads in this, and I did actually check to see what they've been in before. You've got Anthony Ramos. Let me just see if he's been in anything that I know. He was in Godzilla King of Monsters as Staff Sergeant Anthony Martinez. He did a voice in Trolls World Tour. Don't think I've really seen him in anything, to be honest. No, I haven't really seen him in much. I'm sure he's a fine actor, and I think he probably did an all right job of the material that he was given, but holy Christ, Dominique Fishback was abysmal in this film. Genuinely really bad. And I've checked her credentials as well, and she was in Judas and the Black Messiah, which she got a BAFTA award for Best Supporting Role. And I thought that film was great when I watched it at the time, and I'm sure she was great in there because I loved all the performances in that. But she is abysmal in this film. Every single line delivery is flat. You don't believe her character at all. Her character's uninteresting, and genuinely, it felt like she was fresh out of acting college and this was her first acting role. It was awful. It's just so bad. To the point where I was just kind of like face palming every single time she was on screen. And again, like knowing what she's been in before, I can't blame her because I know she can act. I've seen her in a film before where she won a BAFTA, for God's sake. So I don't know if it was a question of the directing, but Stephen Caple Jr.'s got a proven track record at this point. The guy directed Creed 2, which is a film that I absolutely love. And the character interplay and the drama in that film is really good. And he gets so much out of those performances with Dolph Lundgren and Ivan Drago's son in that film, Victor Drago. Like Creed 2 is a fantastic film. So again, I know that Stephen Caple Jr. can direct. So I don't know what went wrong with this one. A lot of it is down to the screenplay again. And a lot of this film, it does clock under 2 hours, though. I will say that about it. If this was any of the Michael Bay Transformers films, this would have been pushing 3 hours, which would have been obnoxious. There'd have been so much product placement, filled with even more insufferable human characters. And it's not that bad. It does clock, I think it's like 1 hour It might be bang on 2 hours or something like that, which is exactly the length it needs to be. If they can get it anywhere under 2.5 hours, then they're winning as far as I'm concerned. This film doesn't need to be that long. But even then, it still felt long. And the plot's just so uninteresting. It's the most by the numbers Transformers film script that you could, ever hope to have. So this is the plot according to IMDb. During the 90s, a new faction of Transformers, the Maximals, joined the Autobots as allies in the battle for Earth. That's pretty much it. There's a new magical, mystical MacGuffin, which always seems to be a thing in these films. In the first film, you had the Allspark. In the second film, you had the Matrix of Leadership. The third film, there was something in the third film as well, wasn't there? It was something that would like terraform Earth or something, or bring Cybertron to Earth. It was like some kind of key or something, wasn't it? I can't even remember Dark of the Moon. Age of Extinction, I believe you had something in that as well. And then 5 had the legendary mystical King Arthur sword, whatever. All of these. The fourth one was called the Seed of something, wasn't it? The seed of creation, the seed of existence, the seed of extinction, or whatever it's called. There's always a magical, mystical MacGuffin, and we've got another one in this one. It's a key that's been split in half, and we've got to find both halves of it and unite it so that the Autobots can get themselves back to Cybertron. And the villains want it because with that, the main villain of, I won't say the main villain of the piece, sort of like the main overlord villain of the film is Unicron. Live action Unicron. Now, I have to imagine that this is probably a carryover from the script of the proposed Transformers 6, the Michael Bay Transformers 6, which never saw the light of day, which would have followed The Last Knight. Because in The Last Knight, I guess, spoiler alert for Transformers 5, they find Unicron at all different parts of the world, and they find out that our Earth, is Unicron, and all like the Earth's crust and the mantle, all of that is surrounding Unicron, and he's the planet core. And I guess the next movie was going to be he was going to break apart as a giant planet transformer. I don't quite know how they would have done that, to be honest. That would have been weird. But Unicron's in this, and he wants to eat Earth because he's hungry, and that's what Unicron does. I love Unicron in the animated movie because they actually do something with his character. That's what the whole third act is with Unicron. Not to mention, he was voiced by Orson Welles as well, which I think, if I remember rightly, was Orson Welles' last film role, was the voice of Unicron. Which I think he was on record saying that he hated, and he just did for a paycheck, which, fair play to him. He wouldn't have known anything about Transformers in his old age at that point. So I guess it's kind of cool that we get to see a live-action Unicron. He looks like Unicron, I'll say that. You never actually see him fully transform, though, into the giant robot with, like, the wings. Like the end of the 86 movie, I think it was, wasn't it? The voice of him, though, just lacks any of the impact that Orson Welles had. Like when Orson Welles spoke in the original movie, and he's like, "I am Unicron," and it was like really like low in the mix and deep, and like his voice just reverberated everything. You don't really get that. He's just kind of got like a generic villain voice in this. They put a bit of modulation on his voice, I suppose, but lacked any kind of impact really. And I don't feel like he had much of a build-up. I feel like they just kind of dropped him in because almost like a villain of the week in this thing. It's like, oh yeah, there was this big bad evil guy called Unicron who none of the Transformers have really talked about at this point. Here you go. But the main villain of the film is voiced by Peter Dinklage, called Scourge, and he's the henchman really of Unicron and his right hand, essentially, and sends him down to Earth to acquire this key, both halves of this key, to combine together so that Unicron will be able to travel through time and space, through galaxies, so that he can eat Earth. Why he can't just go and eat a bunch of other planets is beyond me. Like, does he need the key to travel anywhere? Because he didn't have it before, and he was still snacking on planets, so I guess Unicron can still travel around space and eat planets. He mentions that he's really hungry, though, so maybe, there's no planets nearby and he needs this key to get to Earth. but surely there's closer planets that he could eat, much bigger planets than Earth. Does it satiate his hunger more if there are more humans, or more, like, is that what he gains sustenance from? But if humans only exist on Earth, then that doesn't really carry over to any other planets, does it? I know at the beginning of the 86 movie, I think it was 86, the 80s movie, the movie begins where he's eating a planet of, I think it's a moon of Cybertron or something like that, or it's a nearby planet. There's organisms on there that are kind of tied to Transformers, if I remember rightly. So yeah, they just don't really do anything with Unicron. He plays into the third act. He's very much like Galactus from The Rise of the Silver Surfer, which if you're doing a frame of comparison, that's not a good comparison to have. He just kind of shows up as this big storm cloud at the end, and he's almost going to eat Earth. That's it. But they don't actually do anything where they fight him head on as this big robot. But they do keep it open-ended enough where they could bring back Unicron at some point if they want to, which they probably will. So I mentioned earlier that this doesn't really feel like a sequel to Bumblebee, and I think there's one throwaway line that Optimus Prime says to Bumblebee in the film where he says something like, I know you, because Optimus Prime doesn't like the humans in this film. He's still very much against the humans and doesn't see their full potential. And he says to be, I know you met a human, and I know that she was all right, and you got on with her. And that's it. That's like your only reference really to Bumblebee. There's no other real continuation from that. And I guess this is a spoiler for the film now. In case you couldn't tell, I didn't like this film. But I am going to spoil something, but it's fucking Transformers Rise of the Beast. Do you really give a shit? There comes a point in the film relatively early on. Bumblebee's killed, but no one's ever really gone in Transformers. And of course, he comes back by the end of it. But the reason I feel that they killed off Bumblebee in this film to get him out of the movie was to shift focus to the new Autobot in the film, who basically serves as that Bumblebee surrogate role, and that's the character of Mirage. He's the one, who the machine picks, the car picks the driver kind of thing, the Sam Witwicky and Bumblebee kind of relationship in this. You've got your main male lead who pairs up with Mirage in this really devastating police car chase. Actually, he's trying to steal a car to make some money because his younger brother is, I think he's got like sickle cell syndrome or something like that, which they bring up in the film through some very clunky expositional dialogue because the writing in this film is terrible. And he steals this car. It turns out that it's an Autobot. It locks him in the car and starts driving because there's a beacon that's been sent up where all the Autobots need to rendezvous to. And again, we're playing into the film trope, which I think was maybe started with Lord of the Rings Return of the King back in 2003. The giant column of light that's being beamed up into the sky, which seems like it's in every fucking blockbuster ever. We get another one of those, which is a signal. All the Autobots rendezvous there. But during this police chase, like a cop car's charging towards Mirage, the car, and then this giant truck comes out of nowhere and just fucking pancakes this cop car. Like, that cop is dead. Like, unquestionably, that cop is dead. And the truck driver's probably like really seriously injured as well. But they just drive off and they're laughing about it. They're like, yeah, we got away. Yeah, we got away from him. I'm like, yeah, but like, how many cops died in the process? Innocent cops that probably had families. Like, I think about that shit, There's another bit where they're chasing him on the motorway, and Mirage has the ability where he can duplicate himself. He's a Mirage, right? He can create illusions and shit. So he's driving, then he duplicates himself. So there's like 3 or 5 versions of his car on the highway. And then they veer off, and then the cop car goes straight into the divider. Car flips about 3 times. Fucking dead. And again, they don't mention it. There's no sense of remorse that there's probably a bunch of people that died. I don't know. I just noticed that. The villain, Scourge, is fine. Generic Terracon. Completely different. Just generic villain of the week, really. There's not really any airs and graces to him. He's just a lackey to Unicron, and that's it. And it always kind of boils my piss about these films is that if they really took their time like a Spider-Verse thing, or just a fully animated or fully CGI, however you want to do it. If you just did like a fully animated Transformers film set on Cybertron, where you've got your group of Autobots and your group of Decepticons, and you're cutting between them, and you're building these character relationships and this sense of rapport, and Optimus Prime being a leader, and all of these soldiers and his right-hand man and his trusted advisors and stuff, and maybe some of the Autobots die throughout the movie, and you're actually seeing the real consequences of war, and you build that shit over a trilogy. Maybe the first film you establish why the Decepticons initiate the war against the Autobots and what they've got to get out of it. Maybe you see Megatron's rise to power. And then your second film can be all out war or whatever you want it to do. And then the third film you tied up. If you just did like a trilogy, an animated Transformers trilogy that just focuses on characters, again, those opening 3 minutes of Bumblebee were fantastic. That's all I want from a Transformers film. And in that short space of time, I connected with the characters' personality, that sense of heroism, and just this cataclysmic war that's happening. You could do some really cool stuff with that, but you ain't going to do it while you've got these writers on it. Just using the cookie cutter formula. Oh, there's a magical MacGuffin that we've got to, globe trot and try and find. The Decepticons want it because they're going to bring something to Earth that's going to destroy the world. That's the plot to the first movie, kind of. What is it? Megatron wanted the cube just for ultimate power, I guess, to enslave Earth. So there's that. The second movie was The Fallen and needed the magical MacGuffin so that he could destroy the sun. The third movie, Sentinel Prime wanted the magical MacGuffin or whatever it was. I can't even remember what it was, because he wanted to bring Cybertron to Earth, which is a terrible plan. The fourth film was the seed that was going to terraform the Earth so that the Decepticons can live on it, I think. I can't even remember what the plan is for that. And then 5 was something about bringing Unicron back to life, if I remember rightly. That was it. It's the same plot in every single movie. And you could just do so much with this. If I was going to give any positives, the cast of Transformers is relatively small. Optimus Prime, the great Peter Cullen again, returning to voice Optimus Prime. Dude's an absolute fucking legend. Love him. And hearing that voice of Optimus Prime, it just... Even though you can tell his voice is a lot more aged now, it still carries that impact. And I love me some Optimus Prime. Just as murderous as ever in this film, which isn't really a side of Optimus Prime I like. But yeah, he's pretty psychopathic in these live action versions. But I mean, Peter Cullen, the voice, it's great. Bumblebee, not really in it all that much. Mirage gets a little bit grating, but like, he's fine, whatever. There's too much of sort of like the modern verbiage of how they talk in it, which I don't really like. RC is fantastic. The character design for RC is wonderful. Really, really close to the Generation 1 cartoon, which I really appreciate. That's kind of it for your Autobots, really. And then you've got your Maximals in there too. You've got Optimus Primal, voiced by, I believe it was Ron Perlman, I think. Let me just check. Yeah. I really liked his character. I liked the depiction of how they visually realized the Maximals, how they've got the animal fur on there, but they're still very mechanized. I quite like that. And I liked his character. And the moments where it just focused on the Transformers, and you have those moments, these two great leaders, you have Optimus Prime and Optimus Primal, and they're talking about their history, and that Optimus Primal was named after the wonderful deeds that Optimus Prime did in the Cybertronian Wars, and how they're both leaders and both ultimately want the same thing, but they have disagreements in how they lead people and what they've gone through. I love that. And that was really fascinating stuff. And if I'd just have a whole film of stuff like that, it would be so good. It will be so good. You've got Michelle Yeoh in there as well, who plays... oh, God, I'm trying to remember the names. She plays the eagle thing. What was it called? I'm so prepared, guys. It's been a long time since I've seen Air Razor. That was it. Air Razor. Again, cool designs. They've made the animals merge with the Transformers kind of work. Something that I thought you could maybe only pull off in a cartoon, but I liked it. I liked some of their interplay. Some of the Transformers are really silly in there. You've got Wheeljack in here, who they completely butcher and is nothing like the cartoon counterpart. Has an accent for some reason. Let me try and find Wheeljack on here. They've got a list of all of them on here. Yeah, dude's got like a Mexican accent, and they question that in the film, and he says like, "Oh, I thought you'd speak Spanish," and he says, "Oh, that's really racist. Like, I can have an accent and not speak Spanish." It's like, well, why do they have accents in the first place? It's weird to me. It's I don't know. It's weird. So yeah, some of the designs I'm not too keen on, and the fact that the voice choices. And I thought Wheeljack was in Bumblebee. To be honest, I might be misremembering that, but I thought Wheeljack was in that movie as a completely different character. Or was it The Last Night? Let me check. Was Wheeljack in? I know he was. I swear he was in one of them. But yeah, the accent thing with the Autobots has always got me. You had like Ken Watanabe playing a samurai Autobot, and then you have, I can't remember if it was number 4 or number 5. I think it was number 4. You had the Ferrari that had an Italian accent, and I just find that really, really strange. Like, how do they have these accents? Did they just belong in that part of the world when they crash landed to Earth, but they would have had that accent and their voice before that point? It's weird. There's a load of terrible writing in this film as well, which is just part and parcel of any kind of Transformers film. Some really convenient writing. There's a bit that almost made me burst out laughing. They're having a fight in Peru, all over the roads and the hills and everything. Some nice location shooting, I'd say, on Peru, though. Some really nice scenic shots of Peru. You've got the Autobots fighting against the Terracons. And one of the Terracons, I don't know if it turns into a plane, but it can fly. It's like a jetpack or something. They fly around through the air. And they're on a road, and Optimus Prime and Scourge, like your main protagonist and your main antagonist are just charging at each other on the road and about to engage in combat. An Air Razor, the Eagle, blows up the road in between them. A small little crater blows up the bridge. And I'm like, well, they could just jump over. They could quite easily. We've seen how far the Transformers can jump. If they're taking a drive up to it and then go and just jump over it. But there's this small little crater in the bridge, and it's like Scourge is like, like the Autobots have got away again, and then the Autobots just start driving away. And I'm like, you do realize that one of them in your ranks can turn into like a fucking jet and fly. Just fly over there and just carry on the chase. Pick up all of them and fly them over the small little crater and carry on the chase. So that ends our action scene because there's a small little bridge explosion. At the end of the film, the heroes are the humans are kind of doing their own thing and trying to disable something that will shut the system down so that Unicron can't come to Earth. Now, apparently Unicron can just send millions of these tiny little Predacons out, which are like these little... Do you remember that little scampy thing in Michael Bay's first Transformers movie, Frenzy, the little jittery henchman robot thing? He sends out about 1 million of those. And there's a big, loud, dumb CGI action scene where all of your Transformers are just mashing together with these faceless army of identical-looking Predacons. And Scourge sends one of these, one singular tiny little Predacon, after our human female lead to try and stop her from disabling the whole plan. I thought, well, if Unicron seemingly has these unending resources and he can just send all of these henchmen down to Earth to battle, just keep pumping it full of more Predacons. Or better still, send about 1,000 after her. One of them's bound to get her, but you're going to send one? Why? Just take a few off the battlefield and just instruct them to go and follow her and stop the plan from happening. There's a bit later on as well, and I don't even know if I can be mad about this, because if memory serves, I seem to remember that Sam Witwicky and his dad in the 80s Transformers film had these kind of space power suits, like these power loader suits, like stuff from Aliens. I don't think they were Transformers, if I remember rightly. I don't think they could like straight up transform into a car, but I think it just kind of beefed up what they could carry and maybe what they could attack with. But there's a scene towards the end of the movie where Mirage is just getting absolutely destroyed by Scourge. He's getting blown apart, and Mirage is like on top of the human lead and like protecting him, and he's getting shot to shit. And I was like, dude, you might want to move, because if Mirage dies, which he's like inches away from, he's just gonna fall on you dead weight and straight up crush you. Gigantic mechanical transformer just crushing you like on top of you. But yeah, Mirage dies. But then, because no one's ever really gone, inexplicably, he comes back to life just long enough so that all of his mechanical parts can fuse with the human lead and form. So Mirage is a car, right? And all of his car parts and everything sort of detach and graft themselves onto the human lead. Like creating this power suit. It basically turns him into Iron Man. There's jetpacks, there's cannons on his arm. It's Iron Man. It is Iron Man that he turns him into. And I couldn't quite tell in the film, because it never makes it clear enough, if the main human is controlling everything. Does he sort of mentally think, I want a cannon on my arm, and he's got a cannon on his arm. I want to fly this jetpack now to dodge this attack, and he flies. Or is Mirage kind of doing that, and the human's just kind of like a helpless puppet trapped in this mechanical suit? I believe it's the former. I think he's controlling all of this stuff, but how does he know that he can do all of this? How does he know what the suit's capabilities are? How does he know that it has jetpacks? Because before that point, Mirage never had jetpacks, and now apparently he does, and he can fly. He can like super run with his jet. It's weird. He's got swords on his arms, you name it. It's so dumb. It's so dumb, and I hate it. It was actually laughable. You've just got this one human dude in this CGI. It's like the Tony Stark thing, where they just take Robert Downey Jr.'s head and then just CGI the rest of the suit because they can't be bothered to make a suit. They fight the bad guys, and it's just a big, loud, dumb fight, and it's terrible. And there's a MacGuffin, and we've got to travel from here to find this, and then we've got to get a clue to get here, and it's... yeah. Oh god, it gets really dumb at the end of the film. It gets even dumber at the end of the film. Okay, so this is like spoiler. This film never wanted to end, by the way. You know how every Transformers movie ends with like, I am Optimus Prime, and I send this message out amongst the stars for any surviving Autobots. We are here, and we will fight till all are one. Like, that's how every Transformers film ends. Just a slight variation on that. And this film ends the same way. You've got the Steve Jablonsky music that comes back in, which is nice to hear. The rest of the soundtrack's a piece of shit to this film. It's so unmemorable, and it only becomes memorable at the end once you get those Jablonsky themes coming back into it, which again doesn't make any sense, because this literally can't fit into the Michael Bay universe. Even if it was trying to, Optimus Prime is trying to use this key so that he can magically transport them all back to Cybertron. Even though I thought Cybertron was completely wasted and dead, and there's no life on it, so he's trying to find a way of bringing life to Cybertron. I actually thought they might get back to Cybertron in this, because I thought, look, if you're going to tie this into your original Michael Bay 2007 film, you've got to get them back to Cybertron, because they arrive from Cybertron back to Earth. They're going to have to forget all the human language. Their memories are going to have to be wiped. All their knowledge of Earth and what they've done, it ain't going to make any sense at all. Maybe Bumblebee could be like the R2-D2 and can stay on Earth, but all the others have got to go back to Cybertron, shed their look so that they're in proto form, so they can arrive back to Earth, have no knowledge of Earth, and learn all of Earth's languages through the World Wide Web. And then Unicron has somehow got to get inside Earth and hide himself, so that eventually at the end of Transformers The Last Night, he can break out of it. It's fucked. Continuity is all fucked. But this film just didn't want to end. So you have your ending voiceover from Optimus Prime, and then it cuts to an ending voiceover from Anthony Ramos's character. And then I thought it ended then. But then, oh no, there's another scene. And he's called. He goes for this job interview because he's trying to get a job in the film. It reminds me again, Sam Witwicky from Dark of the Moon goes up trying to get a job, And he goes to this place, and this guy's asking him questions, and he says, "Oh, your resume's a little thin." And he says, "Oh, well, I just recently did like this big job where I kind of saved the world." And he's like, "Oh, tell me about that." And he's like, "Oh, I was just working," and he can't really talk about it. But this guy asks a leading question, like, "Oh, you were in Peru, weren't you, with your space alien friends?" And he kind of goes like, "Who are you?" And he says, "We are a secret covert government organization." And I thought it was going to be Sector 7, which again would be a thing that would tie into the Michael Bay films, kind of. But then he puts the business card on the table, and it says G.I. Joe. And we cut to credits again. So they've been talking about doing it for ages. I know that they're both owned by Hasbro, but does anyone give a fuck about G.I. Joe anymore? At least in terms of the films. You had G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, which came out, I can't even remember when. And I went to the cinema to see that film. And it's genuinely one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. Years and years later, you had G.I. Joe Retaliation, wasn't it? But then they never followed that up with a sequel. They never, like, at least with the Transformers films, although they all pretty much fucking suck, they followed them up pretty regularly to keep them in the public mind. But G.I. Joe, they did one film which didn't do well enough to make a sequel, but then they did make a sequel years after the fact, and I thought, well, this is really weird. Why are you making this? What are you wasting your time making this for? And then it's been years since then, and now we're going to get G.I. Joe teaming up with Transformers, apparently. So I don't know if Unicron's going to come back and it's going to be G.I. Joes and Transformers taking down Unicron. I don't know what it's going to be. Or is Cobra going to team up with Unicron or Megatron or something? It's just done. If this felt, guys, this felt so tired. This felt, and then you think it's ended after that. That's kind of like your Avengers Initiative scene. And then we cut back to the credits, and then we cut back again. And because no one's ever really gone, the main lead has somehow rebuilt Mirage and refigured his spark. Because I thought when a Transformer spark died, that's it, they're gone. Unless there's some magical fucking MacGuffin like in Revenge of the Fallen that brings them back to life. Or in the case of this film, if a rock's got a little bit of energon in the rocks, then someone can just lay on it and come back to life. Because they placed Bumblebee on this rock, but then apparently when Unicron is trying to eat Earth, certain things like rocks or mountains are full of energon, apparently, which I thought was an element that was only found on Cybertron. That being said, though, they have energon cubes, don't they, in the original G1, and they're just like pumping it full of just fuel, basically. So, okay, yeah, fuck it. There's energon in the rocks. Okay, cool. They just lay Bumblebee on there, and when Unicron's trying to eat Earth, there's this shockwave across the world or the nearby area, and it makes all the rocks glow blue. And because Bumblebee's laid on one of the rocks, it somehow rejigs his spark. But the guy didn't have that luxury. So how he rebuilt Mirage from nothing? And it's not like, as far as I'm aware, it's not like he took that suit. So, I said Mirage died and then kind of fashioned this suit around him. I didn't think Mirage was alive. I thought that was just Mirage has lent him his parts, basically. But we see that he's still got that suit. He's still got that power suit at the end of the film. But then he also makes Mirage again. Like full-on working car. Mirage is back, talking, Spark, same character, larger than life. Which, why? Can characters just stay dead? Please, just keep them dead. And then we cut to credits again, and that's it, like, thankfully. But this ending went on for like an extra 10 minutes. I was just like, just round it off. You've done the Optimus Prime voiceover. I am Optimus Prime. Just end it. That's where you always end a Transformers film. But yeah, so the future of this franchise, this felt so tired. It was such a tired franchise. It's so by the numbers. They've made the same movie 7 times. And there's no inspiration there. There's no greater story that's there to be told. There could be a story. There could be a great story that you could tell with Transformers, and you could take it seriously, and you could develop these characters over the course of a trilogy and really have some sense of like pathos and emotion, and still have like your kick-ass Transformers action. Of course you want that. Don't make it into something that it never was. But even the cartoon had some real moments of heart to it and personality to these characters, and you just don't get that with these films. You just really don't. So the next one, if this does well enough, I guess you're going to get Transformers with G.I. Joe. This was done on a budget of 200 mil, so say probably 400 mil for overall, and apparently it's already made 550 mil. Wait, no? No, I don't think it has. How could it have? It's only just come out. Wikipedia hasn't got that correct then, because it's according to the box office so far on Wikipedia, it says that it's made $559, which I don't think that's right. So let me check how much it's made. Rise of the Beast to be domestic gross at this point, wouldn't it? It's only come out here internationally. It's the domestic gross, at least. Opening weekend range was 56 mil. And domestic total range is between 93 and 133 mil. So I think this will make its money back, probably. If it is a loss, if it is a huge loss, then maybe they'll finally take the hit. But I mean, what else has Hasbro got other than Transformers and G.I. Joe? It does feel like they're going for broke with that. It feels like, well, we don't really know what else to do with the Transformers films, and G.I. Joe's kind of dead in the water, so fuck it, merge the two together. That's what it very much feels like to me. I genuinely fell asleep for about 5 minutes in this film because I was so bored. Occasionally, I'd perk up when the Transformers are on screen and actually having some kind of interplay and characterization, but it's very, very, very few and far between. And for most of the time, you're obsessing over these human characters that you just don't give a shit about. And if someone wrote a Transformer script and passed it to me, and I'd read through it, I would just delete every single page that had human characters in it, because you don't need them. That's not where the focus should be. And it frustrates me that after so long, almost, in 2027, I know we're still a few years away from that, but in 2027, these films will have been going for 20 years. That is terrifying. That is actually terrifying to me. And they still haven't got them right. They've still just been cranking out the same old shit because they make money. The Michael Bay films, as terrible as they were, made a fuckload of money. So the studios are just going to keep redoing the same formula, aren't they, until people get bored of it. And I really hope people have got bored of it now, because I know I certainly have. So yeah, just watch the old Generation 1 cartoons. Watch Beast Wars if you want some like good the animation's dated in there, but at least you're going to get some all right characters in there and some pretty good story arcs. That'll do it for my review on Transformers Rise of the Beasts. I'm done. I'm already forgetting aspects of this film. I can't believe I actually willingly took myself to the cinema today to go and watch this piece of shit, because I've been avoiding a lot of films that I really haven't wanted to see. And to be honest, I really didn't want to see this one, but I thought, well, I've seen all the other previous films in the franchise, so in for a penny, in for a pound at this point, I guess. But if you've seen it, let me know your thoughts on Transformers Rise of the Beast. Did you enjoy it? How would you say it ranks in comparison to all the other Transformers films and Bumblebee? Are you ready to see this franchise die a death now, or do you want to see them make more of them? Anything regarding Transformers, please do let me know. Please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. Hopefully this video plays okay, and I'll do a little bit of a replay of this one just so I can watch it back and see if it's still glitching in and out. But fingers crossed, hopefully we've got to the bottom of it and it's working okay now. You can follow me on Twitter as well. That's going across the bottom of the screen at Hobbit Fan Editor. I don't really post much on there now, but I might try and get back into it. But you just find me on YouTube, and I'll just, I'll keep streaming. Next week is going to be a big one. We've got The Flash. I'm going to try and get my mate Dale on that one, who actually the first video on this channel, which was the Batman review. He's a big DC guy, and he loves Batman. We love Michael Keaton Batman. So if I can get him on this as a live stream so he can help me review it, that'll be awesome. So fingers crossed for that, because that should be a good discussion. Anyway, have a good one, everyone, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Take care, everyone.